We're back for lesson 9, and we're going to continue to talk about 40 Acres and a Mule reconstruction and Black women in that era. So, we are going to go ahead and address the elephant in the room, I'll call it. Now, on some of my videos, particularly when they are posted on YouTube, the common statement that I get, well, why are we talking about what happened to Black people and slavery and this and that? Well, Black people owned slaves. Okay. Yes, there were. There were people, Black people that owned slaves beginning around 1654. There were overseers when Africans were being sold on the Atlantic slave trade. And even after the Civil War, there were some Black people that owned slaves that also purchased the freedom for their loved ones, and also some Black people that even, I would say, owned the services of white indentured servants. So, yeah. You can also look up people like Nat Butler, who owned slaves in Maryland. You can look at the Pendarvis family, Justice Angel, Marie Matoyer, and I'll stop at Andrew Dunford because he's going to be the transition into talking about another thing that I would like to shed some light on. So I am going to read from the history collection, but when we talk about Andrew Dunford, he was a physician and he was born of an Englishman and a free Black woman. And because of the Louisiana Purchase of 1800, he became a United States citizen. But throughout that time, what also ended up happening was his father died and he became well connected with another white, wealthy plantation owner, I'll call it, that really introduced him to the world of owning slaves. Now, there were some accounts about Dunford being able to free his slaves at any given point in time to allow them to go back to Africa or Liberia. And of course, he was like, nah, son, I got too much here. And I really want us to think about that. So when we look at Dunford, for example, and if you go back and read the accounts of other Black either slave owners or handlers or people that assisted with the transatlantic slave trade, do you see commonalities today? Because we can also look at whether it was on plantations or throughout the process. We also know through many accounts that you had your different levels of Black people, from working the fields to being in the house, to Black people who at the time, again, whether or not we can say that it was before or after or back in the day or current day, but we have a lot of folks that were very vested in their slave owners' interests. And a lot of times what we know today, which also goes back to that performance, is the idea of Sambo or Uncle Tom or Django, which when we think about Kendrick Lamar's performance, who was that primary person throughout? We have Samuel L. Jackson playing the role of Uncle Sam, who could also be known as Uncle Tom, which it's very funny because Samuel Jackson also played in the movie Django. So it's interesting to see how he played the role in that film, but then he also portrayed Uncle Sam in Kendrick Lamar's performance. So this will be video, I'll say 9A, but yes, with any type of enslavement or any type of region where there is indentured servitude, there are going to be people on both sides that are doing things that are harmful. We need us to put our critical thinking caps on and actually do the work that is required to unpack this stuff, because those behaviors, as I mentioned when we started off this series of talking about how trauma is passed down, that information is also in this book, My Grandmother's Hands. I spoke about this in terms of how African Americans, or Black people specifically in the US, also have to reconcile with the pain from our past as well, and walk through both clean and dirty pain. So, please do me a favor. Don't come in my comments talking about that foolishness of victimhood and Black people own slave. Yes, they did. Yeah. Yeah. What does that add to the conversation though? Because are you just trying to have a gotcha moment? Are you trying to engage in thoughtful conversation? Are you trying to one up someone? What is the purpose? And I'm saying you, but what is the purpose of that? So, your assignment is going to be to dig a little deeper and examine when I am in conversation and when I feel like my back is against the wall, how do I respond?